Hey everyone, how are you doing today? I've been hearing from a bunch of you that my recent videos aren't popping up in your feed the way they used to. YouTube's algorithm can be a bit moody, so the best way to make sure you never miss an upload is to turn on all notifications for the channel. Here's how to double check yours. It only takes a few seconds. On your phone, in the YouTube app, tap my channel name under any of my videos, or search for it. Just to the right of the subscribed button, you'll see a bell icon. Tap the bell and select All. That tells YouTube to ping you every time I go live or drop something new. On your desktop, within YouTube's website, head to my channel page. Hover over or click the bell icon next to the subscribed button. Choose All Notifications. Here's a pro tip. Make sure notifications are enabled on your device settings too. If they're blocked at the phone's operating system level, YouTube can't push them through. Thank you for taking a moment to do this. Your support means everything. And with the bell turned on, you'll be the first in line whenever I post. See you in the next video.
I'm 30. My daughter just turned 1, and I've spent the past 5 years walking the tightrope between loyalty to my mom and basic decency toward my father. That rope finally snapped at Poppy's first birthday party. I'm exhausted, confused, and a little sick of my own righteous anger. So here I am, asking internet strangers whether I've crossed the line from reasonable boundaries into petty vengeance. My parents met in secondary school during a joint French exchange trip, the sort of origin story that turns up in small-town newspapers when couples hit their ruby anniversary. They married at 22, bought a red brick semi with a postage stamp garden, and produced me and my younger brother, Josh, before they'd finished paying off the curtains. Growing up, I thought they were the benchmark for functional marriage. Dad coached Sunday League football, Mom baked tray bakes for the PTA, and our holidays were predictable caravans at Scarborough, or, if Dad's bonuses hit, a week in Tenerife. We weren't perfect. Dad could be moody if his team lost. Mom sometimes weaponized the silent treatment. But I never saw them fight about anything worse than whether we could afford Sky Sports. When I left for uni, I carried their love story like a good luck charm, proof that high school sweethearts could last. The charm shattered 5 years ago, a random Tuesday evening in late autumn. I'd popped around to borrow Mom's cake stand for my engagement party. The house smelled of baked salmon and dill. The radio played some 90s throwback, and everything looked normal, right up until Dad walked into the kitchen, stared at the floor, and said he'd be staying with a mate for a bit. No fight, no context, just a sentence dropped like a live hand grenade. Mom blinked and asked what on earth he was talking about. He repeated himself, grabbed a pre-packed overnight bag from the hallway, one I hadn't noticed when I came in, and left. I followed him outside, asked whether he was ill or having a breakdown. He mumbled something about needing space and drove off. Within 2 weeks, the rumors started. An old school friend messaged me, "Is it true your dad shacked up with that blonde secretary of his?" My stomach flipped. I remembered meeting Shelley at Dad's office Christmas party, a chatty woman who wore pencil skirts and a laugh a bit too big for the cramped conference room. I'd introduced myself as his daughter. She said, "He never shuts up about you," in a tone I'd filed under friendly. I'd even told Mom that Shelley seemed lovely. Joke's on me. Dad finally owned up after Mom cornered him at the solicitor's office. He spoke about finding real happiness, about how he'd stayed for appearances far too long, how life was too short to deny true love once you found it. Mom sobbed so hard she nearly vomited. Nobody uses true love to the wife he's divorcing unless he's mainlining cliches. The divorce galloped through the courts because Dad hired an aggressive lawyer who argued that because he'd earned more than 2/3 of the household income, he deserved the lion's share of the assets. Mom's solicitor advised her to settle. She was drained, afraid of legal fees, and still shell-shocked. She walked away with less than half of the house sale, her pension slashed, and a monthly maintenance payment that wouldn't cover council tax. She moved into a rented terrace across town and took a temp job answering calls for a utility company. I spent weekends assembling flat-pack furniture, while she tried to pretend floral cushions and scented candles made it feel like home. Whenever I drove past our old house, now occupied by a young couple who'd redesigned the front garden, I felt a weird mix of nostalgia and betrayal, like the bricks themselves had sided with Dad. 3 months after the decree absolute arrived, an envelope landed on my doormat, exploding glitter over everything. Inside was a wedding invitation. Dad and Shelley were tying the knot in August. He'd added a post-it. "Really hope you can come, Princess. Shelley would love to have you there." The audacity triggered something primal in me. I stuffed the invite back into the envelope, minus the RSVP card, and mailed it to his office. He rang 2 days later, voice wobbling, asking why I was punishing him. I said attending the wedding of the woman who helped blow up my family felt a bridge too far. He insisted Shelley wasn't a homewrecker. Their love blossomed only after my parents' marriage had emotionally expired. I hung up mid-monologue about soulmates. This was the last polite conversation we had for nearly 2 years. Mom, meanwhile, shrank. She'd always been softly spoken, but now her sentences trailed off halfway, as though the endings were too heavy to carry. She stopped dyeing her hair, stopped wearing jewelry, stopped believing compliments. I offered to bankroll therapy. She said she didn't want to burden me. On her 57th birthday, I found her crying over an old anniversary card where Dad had written, "Here's to forever, darling." I swore I'd never put her in the same room as Shelley again. I realize how dramatic that sounds, but when you watch someone who raised you disintegrate overnight, you develop a proactiveness bordering on feral. Time lurched forward. My husband and I married in a small civil ceremony. Dad wasn't invited. He sent a check we never cashed. I got pregnant 18 months later. Pregnancy hormones intensified everything. I loved harder, raged harder, nested like a psychotic sparrow. At 23 weeks, Dad turned up unannounced with a life-size teddy bear that sang lullabies and, surprise, Shelley. I opened the door, Belly leading the way, and told him he could come in if she waited in the car. Shelley folded her arms across her floral blouse and said she refused to be treated like a pariah. I refused to budge. After 10 minutes of stalemate, they left the teddy on the step and drove away. The bear scared the living daylights out of our dog that night, but I couldn't bring myself to throw it out. Proof of yet another boundary stomp. When Christmas rolled around, I hosted dinner for immediate family. I texted Dad 2 weeks in advance. "You're welcome between 5 and 8 if you come alone." He replied with a thumbs up emoji. On the day, at precisely 6, the doorbell rang. Through the frosted glass, I saw 2 silhouettes. My pulse spiked. I opened the door, and there they were. Dad in his novelty pudding jumper, Shelley in a sequined reindeer number. I stepped onto the porch, shut the door behind me, and calmly handed Dad a foil parcel of mince pies. He tried to push past. I blocked him with my shoulder. He said Mom would have to accept reality eventually, that families evolve. I said evolution could happen somewhere else. He flung the pies onto the snowless lawn and left. That night, he sent a 3-page email accusing me of systematically undermining his marriage. I replied with a screenshot of the word consequences and no further comment. Therapy became my sanity valve. My therapist, a no-nonsense woman who knitted between sessions, told me that boundaries without enforcement are just suggestions. She helped me script phrases like, "I'm not discussing that," and "this isn't negotiable." She also warned that reinforcing offense often makes the person who keeps climbing it accuse you of cruelty. Useful if depressing logic. Then Poppy arrived, all scrunched features and shrill lungs. Becoming a mother reframed everything. The idea of inflicting even a fraction of Mom's heartbreak on my child made my chest ache. When Poppy turned 6 months, Dad called to suggest a big family barbecue to celebrate fresh starts. I said I'd bring Poppy to meet him at a neutral cafe for an hour. No Shelley, no extended clan. He claimed excluding his wife was morally repugnant. Cafe idea died. Fast forward to last week. We planned a garden party for Poppy's first birthday. Rainbow bunting, bubble machine, a cake shaped like a friendly caterpillar. I kept the guest list tight. My husband's parents, Mom, Josh, 2 old uni friends, my best friend who is basically an auntie by choice. 3 weeks before, I texted Dad. Party is at 2 to 4 p.m. on Saturday. Would love you to come if you're able to attend solo. Read receipt pinged. No reply. I assumed a refusal by silence. Party day dawned unexpectedly sunny. Poppy beamed at every balloon, smeared icing across her cheeks, and giggled at the bubbles. For 2 blissful hours, life felt uncomplicated. Then the side gate creaked. I turned and saw Dad's familiar shoulders, and next to him, Shelley, carrying an enormous gift bag. I felt heat flood my face. Mum froze mid-tong, hovering over charred sausages. Josh mouthed, "Are you okay?" I walked briskly toward them, planting myself between Shelley's patent heels and my back garden. I asked Dad to step inside for a private word. He followed me into the kitchen, leaving Shelley on the patio, smiling at guests who didn't know where to look. I reminded him of the boundary. He said he'd read the text, but thought once he arrived, I'd realize family mattered more than old wounds. I told him to leave immediately. He said I was manufacturing drama, and that Shelley had made Poppy a handmade memory quilt. I said wonderful. She could mail it. He raised his voice, saying I was poisoning Poppy against her grandparents. I said Poppy wasn't even verbal yet. He was jumping the gun. The argument spiraled. He accused me of weaponizing my child. I accused him of perpetual disrespect. He invoked biblical forgiveness. I invoked secular door-slamming rights. Finally, I told him if he didn't leave, I'd have my friend Ben, 6'4", ex-rugby, escort them. Dad's eyes flashed. He stormed outside, grabbed Shelley's arm, and stomped toward the gate. Halfway down the path, he turned and yelled loud enough for the neighbors' curtains to twitch. "You're punishing your kids for denying them a granddad." I shouted back that granddads who trample boundaries aren't gifts, they're liabilities. He fired another insult about me turning into my mother, miserable and alone, and then they were gone. I returned to a silent crowd. My husband squeezed my hand. Mum's face was pale, but determined. She started handing out paper plates as though nothing happened. Josh poured me a double gin. Poppy chewed obliviously on a wooden spoon, world still safe and bright. The fallout began before the balloons deflated. Dad's first salvo was a text 700 words long, quoting articles about parental alienation and the psychological damage of cutting off grandparents. He finished with a threat to seek legal visitation rights. A quick call to a family solicitor confirmed that, in the UK, grandparents must apply for permission to apply, and judges rarely override a parent's reasonable objections. Still, the idea of court made my stomach churn. Shelley posted a passive-aggressive Facebook status about relatives who can't let go of bitterness, tagging Dad and adding a praying hands emoji. Mutual acquaintances dove into the comments with popcorn gifs. I resisted the urge to reply. Public mudslinging felt tacky. The extended family fractured. Dad's older sister rang to say I'd humiliated her brother and should apologize. She cited the blood is thicker than water line, ignoring that the original quote actually means the opposite. My cousin Dan, whose dad also cheated spectacularly, sent a meme of a drawbridge raising with the caption, "Boundaries, how to keep the moat clean." Mum worried if I'd regret the ultimatum once emotions cooled. My husband, ever the diplomat, admitted he hated seeing me in pain, but fretted that Poppy might grow up resenting the missing grandparent chapter. We had circular arguments for nights. Is an inconsistent grandparent better than none? Does drawing a hard line teach Poppy self-respect or model stubbornness? We never reached consensus. I lie awake replaying Dad's accusations about punishing the kids. I picture Poppy at school sharing a Draw Your Family poster with a gap where a granddad should be. Will she feel deprived? Or will she feel safe knowing her mom wouldn't let anyone, even her own father, bulldoze boundaries? I imagine future explanations. Me handing her a mug of cocoa at 13, saying, "Granddad chose not to follow the rules that keep our family kind." Will that be noble or bitter? Part of me wonders if I should attempt a compromise. Dad could meet us in a public park, Shelley absent, duration capped at an hour. But we tried neutral ground once, and he refused on the basis it treated him like a criminal. Another option: invite both of them to an event and let Mum decide whether to come. That feels like forcing her to either swallow humiliation or miss her granddaughter's milestones. The idea curdles at my chest. More unsettling is the tiny voice that admits I sometimes enjoy watching Dad squirm. His face when I handed back the Christmas mince pies tasted like justice in the moment. Is that a sign I'm sliding from healthy anger into spite? My therapist says feeling satisfaction when a boundary stands firm is normal. Savoring someone's pain for its own sake is where trouble starts. The line is thin and blurry in my head. Here's another complicating detail. Shelley recently had a baby boy. Dad sent a photo of his new son in a blue crocheted blanket. Seeing him cradle that infant triggered an unexpected cocktail of rage and sorrow. Rage while he manages to be a doting father now, while failing Granddad 101. Sorrow that Poppy and her new uncle will likely be strangers. Parenting seems to reveal every hidden bruised corner of your own childhood expectations. If I knew with certainty that Dad could walk into a room, apologize without excuses, and keep Shelley away until invited, I'd open my door tomorrow. But his track record is a row of broken promises. He apologizes when cornered, then resets to Shelley is my wife, deal with it the second he thinks the dust is settled. He calls concessions humiliations rather than bridges. The cycle leaves me raw. It's hard to gamble my daughter's emotional landscape on a man who treats boundaries like speed bumps. After all, society generally expects us to accept new partners eventually. Yet acceptance usually requires remorse from the wrongdoer and time for wounds to scar. Dad skipped remorse and telescoped time. He wants a fully blended family with zero acknowledgement of collateral damage. In a weird twist, if he'd spent a year single, apologized properly, then begun dating Shelley, I might have stood beside him at the altar. It's the rewrite of history that rankles, the narrative that his marriage was dead long before Shelley, that Mom just hadn't noticed. Gaslighting by retcon. Writing this now, I realize part of my fury is protectiveness of the story. Dad keeps trying to edit chapters that belong to Mom, Josh, and me. By enforcing the boundary, I'm guarding the original text. Trouble is, gatekeeping turns lonely. So here's where I stand. Dad can see Poppy anytime he likes, by himself and after a genuine apology that acknowledges why the rules exist. He refuses. I won't budge. Poppy's second birthday looms 11 months away. I'd love nothing more than a drama-free picnic with all grandparents present. But unless Dad grasps that consequences aren't revenge, just cause and effect, I'll be airmailing him another unopened invitation. That brings me to you, wise, or at least opinionated Redditors. Am I enforcing a reasonable boundary to protect my mom, my child, and my own mental health? OP's dad didn't just cross a boundary. He jackhammered it, painted over the lines, and pretended it never existed. OP gave him a crystal clear condition. He ignored it. OP enforced the consequence. That's parenting 101, and it's exactly what OP will teach her daughter someday. If someone won't respect your rules in your own space, they don't get to stay. Grandparent status is a privilege, not a constitutional right. OP needs to stick to her boundary. If he really wants a relationship with Poppy, he knows what to do. And now let's hear the community's opinion. I get why you're furious. Your dad detonated the family, then tried to drag everyone into his fresh start fantasy. But yanking him out mid-party made a public spectacle that your mom and guests had to absorb. You could have let them finish the cake, then laid down consequences privately. He's way more in the wrong, but you might reconsider how the enforcement looks going forward. Keep the boundary. Skip the drama. I'll be 18 in a couple of months. My stepfather of 5 years gave me the heads up that I need to start paying a fair rent to continue living in the house after I turn 18. The house we currently live in belonged to my dad, who died when I was 6. My mom and dad were never married, and I inherited the house, and my mom and I lived here, and then my stepfather moved in after they got married. Looks like my stepfather was under the impression that my mom owns the house. I told him that it's not happening, as I own the house. He laughed at me and didn't believe it. I talked to my mom and she confirmed that she never told him that I owned the house. He now knows the truth. So the reality is, he believed it was completely fair to ask me to pay rent when he didn't know I owned the house. So it's only fair that I ask him to pay me rent now. Last night I gave them the heads up that if they continue planning to live here after I turn 18, that's fine, but they need to start paying rent. My stepfather believes this is unfair, as it's a sudden change and he needs more time, and that I'm being heartless because you don't do this to family. Well, he was prepared to do this to me, so what's the difference? He said he did it to help me gain my independence and prepare for an adult life, and that's part of growing up, whereas I'm doing it to spite. I told him that if I need to pay rent to learn to be an adult, then what does that make him, living here rent-free? He told me I'm out of line, and the conversation ended. My mom believes he made a mistake asking me to pay rent, but I'm being spiteful, and it's wrong of me to push for this, as it will result in our family being torn apart. Am I the a-hole here? Not the a-hole. Charge him rent. It's not spiteful. That's what adults do. They either buy homes or pay rent for the places they live. He doesn't think you should be allowed to live rent-free when he thought your mother owned the house, but he thinks he should be allowed to live rent-free. Tell him to cough up or leave. Edited to add. By the way, he told you that you have to pay rent in a house that he doesn't even own. Even if your mother did own the house, any rental agreement should have come from your mother, not him. You are not his child. He has no business parenting you, even if he had the best of intentions. And when he tells you he was only doing it to prepare you for life and adult responsibilities, I call BS. If that's the way he truly felt, then he would have gone through your mother, since she's related to you and he thought it was her house. It wouldn't surprise me to learn that he was hoping that you'd pay him rent, lining his pockets with free money, collecting rent on a house that isn't even his. It's unfair because it's a sudden change? Gee, it was perfectly fine when the sudden change was happening to you. Not the a-hole. He needs to act like an adult and pay his own way in life. Get a rental contract and make them sign it or start the eviction process. You know that he would 100% make you pay up or get out. Not the a-hole. Oh, when the shoe is on the other foot, your stepdad is all about taking care of family. Why wouldn't your mom tell him? At some point, you would want to either have this as your home or selling it or renting it out for income. Did she really believe that she and him would just continue to live there forever? I would stand firm and draw up a lease that would begin in 30 days. This is your house, and honestly, I don't believe that your mom had any intention of ever letting this be your home. Now that he knows it's yours, he sounds like he would try to push you around. He didn't even tell your mom he was asking you for rent. My family recently lost our father to cancer. He had an interesting past before he met our mother. He was a crew member for some big hair bands back in the day, so you can imagine what he got up to in his early 20s. He always used to joke that he wouldn't be surprised if we had a half-sibling running around somewhere, because he couldn't remember a whole lot of his time on the road. But I could tell under the joking, it always bothered him. My siblings and I did a DNA test just to see. For years, nothing more than cousins popped up, until well after he had been diagnosed and was on hospice care. In the last 6 months of his life, we were suddenly DNA matched with a half-sister, almost a decade older than me, the eldest. The year of her birth matched with his time on the road. Before we answered the message she sent us, we spoke to our father first to see if he even felt up to speaking with her, as he was very, very sick at this point. When we told him, he broke down and said we confirmed his worst fear, that there was a child of his out there that he never got to help raise and support, and that he wanted to speak to her as soon as possible. That's when the trouble started. We passed on his number to her after a message explaining his condition, and that he genuinely didn't know she was out there until now. She began calling him constantly and harassing him. Sometimes we could hear her screaming through the phone, demanding to know why he abandoned her and her mom, why he never thought to look for her, why he was so irresponsible, etc. We begged him to hang up, but he never would. He said it was the only thing he could do for her this late in life, to listen. When we let her know that he passed, she immediately demanded to know what her share was. I was shocked. I told her nothing. His medical expenses drained all his savings, and after we paid for his final arrangements, there was only $1,000 left apiece for my siblings and I. I also told her that the way she harassed my father on his deathbed was something I could never forgive, that it wasn't his fault alone that she grew up without him. Her mother had a part to play as well. My mother and sisters tell me that I'm not considering her feelings, or what she must have felt like growing up without a father. But my dad put me in charge of his estate, and I won't budge. Those were the last months of his life, and he was wrecked after every phone call with her. They say that I should just give her what's left of the money, since it's not much, and she does not have a very good life from the info we got out of her, but I just can't bring myself to do it. Not the a-hole. The fact that the first concern she had when he passed was money. He didn't know of her existence, and I won't say he's not to blame, but it's something her mother could have, I don't know, mentioned to him years ago. She directed all of her anger and frustration to the wrong person, and honestly, F empathy after that. Sorry for your loss, and please, stick with your gut on this. Not the a-hole. Not your responsibility. She's rude, has no empathy. He clearly had worry for this. He had regret. I'd say if she had some compassion, showed some sort of love or understanding, and didn't demand money from a dead man she doesn't know at all, then there could be some type of share for her. Sorta. Not really. Not the a-hole. I mean, if your father had wanted her to have something, he would have added her to the estate. He was talking to her, so it sounds like he was of sound mind if he had wanted to. Don't give her any money. Stop taking her calls. It doesn't sound like she wants to get to know you anyway. I get it. She's angry. But that's not your burden to bear. I, 40 female, was a single mother to my daughter, Amy, 15 female. I came out 3 years ago and married my wife, Jenna, 42 female, last year. She has a daughter, Nora, 13 female. We all live together as I have full custody of my daughter. It was kind of hard for her to adjust to having a second mom, but they get along well. The girls have their birthdays very close, only 2 days apart. So we decided to have a joint birthday party for both of them, since Nora had a hard time making new friends. They moved in with us and she's very shy. Most of my family lives out of the country, so the gifts were sent a week early. It was a huge bag, with at least 20 gifts. The party was nice, and we opened the bag at night once everyone left. Jenna handed out the presents as she took them out. After 12 gifts in a row just for Amy, I checked the bag and froze to see that there was only one gift for Nora, from my parents. She pretended it wasn't a big deal, but as she opened the present, I saw her eyes drop. It was a $15 tumbler from Walmart. Not to sound ungrateful, but Amy's gifts were much more expensive. Lots of gift cards for over $100, a new phone, limited edition Funkos, designer clothes, and lots of cards wishing her a happy birthday. Needless to say, I blew up the family chat, calling out my parents, siblings, and extended family who sent gifts for not considering Nora and my parents for the cheap gift. No one took me seriously since it's not our duty to give gifts to someone else's kid, and Amy deserved them since I didn't even throw her own birthday party, emphasizing that Jenna and Nora are my problem, not theirs. Nora was clearly hurt since it's not the first time my family has left her out. That night, I asked Amy to share some of the gifts with her stepsister. Not all of them, just a couple of gift cards and some of the new clothes. Amy refused. This surprised me, since she never had a problem with sharing, and even though she and Nora are not BFFs, they usually get along. After asking why, Amy started crying, saying that she never wanted a joint birthday party and that I force her to share everything with Nora. They share a room for space, and I make sure they're both invited to the same parties and sleepovers, so that Nora won't be left out. If they don't invite both of them, then neither of them goes. Amy stated that she at least wanted her own gifts to be hers alone. I scolded her for being selfish with her stepsister, grounded her, and took a couple of the presents to give to Nora. She turned them down because she didn't want problems with Amy, and it felt like pity. Since then, Amy has been cold to all of us. I just wanted my two girls to be closer with the joint party and have the same things. Am I the a-hole? Clarification. Jenna and I bought gifts for the girls, their own tablets, as well as their friends. Nora also received gifts from her extended family, but they sent for Amy as well. Yes, the a-hole. You are basically asking your daughter to share her complete identity with Nora. Her room, her stuff, her family, her friends, her birthday party, the parties she goes to, sleepovers. Is there anything really hers? This can't be good for her development. She needs to be her own person. Me, female, and my husband, Finn, male, have a big difference in income, as he gave up a stable and well-paid job to start his master's degree. The master's scholarship in my country is poorly paid, and with the cost of research, there is very little left over. A comparison with fictitious values. He earned $4K. He currently receives $2.3K, and only $500 is left. I am responsible for 90% of the house's expenses and everything else. I earn $7K. We have joint accounts, and yes, I support him to pursue his master's degree, and I don't mind paying the expenses. Finn has a best friend since childhood, Marcus, who got married on Friday, and my husband was the best man. He was responsible for the bachelor party, and although the groomsmen agreed to split the costs, most of the costs were not split. Many escaped or ignored the messages. And Finn was responsible in the end. That was $2K. Finn asked if I could help, and I agreed. I had money saved. Another point to highlight to understand the situation. I gave my husband $500 in notes for him to keep and use in emergencies. On the wedding day, during the party, There was a tradition of cutting the groom's tie and going from table to table asking people to put some money. My husband was with Marcus, and it was time to get to my table. He took the $500 from his wallet. He only uses cards. The money is for emergencies. Showing himself and putting it on his tie. There was a whole celebration, but I was very angry. Finn came back to the table 30 minutes later, and I said that the $500 I gave was for emergencies and not for show-off. He said that was to help his friend and that the money was ours, so he could also decide what to do. I was very clear, saying that in relation to our expenses, including the emergency, it is ours, but to show off to a bunch of men with that money, it becomes mine and I want it back. Because I didn't give it to that intention and remembered that we already paid for the bachelor party. We argued a bit and speak poorly during the week, but I still made it clear that I wanted the money back. He's saying that I'm manipulating him, since I supported him to get his master's and he depends on me financially. I knew he doesn't have many conditions and that it was stupid to ask for it back. Am I the a-hole? Minimum wage here, $1,200. I think asking for him to take it back is a bit much. However, I do think he should make it up somehow. Can he sell some belongings or get a part-time job? Not the a-hole, because your husband is behaving immaturely. He needs to accept that your joint financial situation is not great right now, and you being all right with shouldering more expenses now for long-term joint gain is not a license for him to spend on his buddies like he's still bringing in a good paycheck. In the meantime, stop giving him so much for emergencies. I have a feeling the problem with your husband goes far beyond this. He's living beyond his means, and that spells a ton of future trouble if you do not separate your finances now. Not the a-hole. Not the a-hole, but you might want to cut your losses or speak to the groom himself and explain the situation. Even if you didn't intend for that money to be spent that way, asking for a wedding gift back is in bad taste. If you really have to have it back, go to the guy himself. If they're a decent person, they'll understand. I own my own business and currently employ 15 people. I don't wish to say what the business is, but it's doing well despite the current climate. I have 3 grown-up children, 24, 22, and 21, from my first marriage, and my stepson Josh, 18, from my current marriage. I've only called him stepson in the title so people know his relationship to me. When my 3 grown-up children were growing up, I always told them if they wanted to work for me, then I'd organize a job interview, and we'd go from there. But what they didn't know is they were getting a job no matter what. I just wanted them to experience a job interview so they are more prepared for the future if they choose a different career path. 2 of my children took me up on my offer and still work for me. I met my current wife 8 years ago, and she introduced me to Josh a year later. Before she let me meet Josh, she asked me what his position would be in our relationship, and I told her I would always treat him like my own. A year later, my wife and I got married, and from that day onwards, he called me Dad. He's never known his biological dad, as he ran off due to not wanting children, so for Josh to call me Dad is honestly an honor. My eldest 3 treat him exactly like a brother. They take him on days out, and he's 100% part of the family. After getting married, I said to Josh the same offer was on the table for him. If he wanted to work for my company, I'd organize an interview and we'd go from there. This year, Josh left 6th year in high school and couldn't decide if he wanted to go to university or work for me. In the end, he decided university isn't for him, and he'd get a job after the summer holidays, which haven't long started here. He asked if I could organize a job interview for him, and I told him of course. What I haven't told him is there's a job there for him anyway. It's just to give him some experience. Well, my wife is fuming at me. She said so much for treating him like my own, and I told her this is exactly what I've done for my other 3. I even told her there was a job for him, but I thought getting an interview under his belt where how it went won't affect the outcome would be a good idea for his future. My wife's opinion is that he's my last child, so it's only fair he gets a job with no interview. This all happened 2 days ago, and my wife has barely spoke a word to me since. Not the a-hole. You are being extremely reasonable. It's honestly a bit alarming that she would have that reaction and say that you don't treat him like your son, despite 8 years of doing just that over a job interview. He isn't bothered by it. You've done it for all your kids. Maybe she has something else bothering her, because it is hard to justify her response here. Not the a-hole. You are quite literally treating your stepson the way you treated your biological children, and being the youngest doesn't entitle him to special privileges. I genuinely don't see why your wife is upset. Not the a-hole at all. He is being given a job, and you're helping him get some real-life experience. He's getting the exact same treatment that your other kids received. Your wife's behavior is just plain weird here.